Desert Haven Hotel. No gas, no phone signal. The sun feels like it's trying to cook me for dinner. Perfect, Clara joked. She shut the car door with a loud thud. She looked at the endless desert around her, feeling like she was standing in a giant frying pan. Wiping the sweat from her face, she glanced at the fuel gauge. It was empty. Great, she added with a tired grin. Now I just need some salt and pepper. Clara finished her water and looked at the horizon. Through the hot air, she saw something shiny. It looked gold and bright. At first, she thought it wasn't real, but the shiny spot didn't disappear. Soon, she saw a sign, Desert Haven Hotel, Rest and Renewal. Clara shook her head. Am I dreaming? Or is this the luckiest place in the world? She had no other choice. She grabbed her backpack and started walking toward the golden light. Her boots sank into the soft sand with each step. The sun was hot on her shoulders, and sweat ran down her face. After walking for a long time, she saw a big building. Its tall white walls shone brightly. Palm trees stood around the courtyard. In the middle, a fountain was bubbling, and the water sparkled under the blue sky. Wow, Clara said softly. She couldn't believe her eyes. This looks like a castle in the middle of nowhere. She pushed open the big wooden doors and stepped inside. Cool air greeted her, and her skin relaxed after the heat outside. The lobby smelled like flowers. Marble floors shone under golden chandeliers, and soft velvet chairs made the place look elegant. Welcome to Desert Haven, said a smooth voice. Clara saw a tall man behind the reception desk. The man wore a fine black suit. His smile was perfect, his hair neat, and his eyes calm. My name is Victor, the man said. I am the manager. You have arrived at just the right time. Right time? Clara asked, raising her eyebrows. Victor's smile widened, but his eyes stayed cold. Yes. You will see soon. But first, let me help you find a room. You must be very tired from the desert. Clara was too hot and tired to ask more questions. She followed Victor down a long hallway. The thick carpet felt soft under her feet. The lighting was warm and golden. Mirrors lined the walls and reflected the light. They stopped at a door marked 202. Victor turned the key, opened the door, and gave a small bow. Welcome to your personal sanctuary, he said. Inside, there was a big bed with soft sheets. A large window showed the desert. On the table, there were fruits, cookies, and cold water. A note said, "Relax and enjoy the desert." This is amazing, Clara said, dropping her backpack on a soft chair. Victor chuckled. We give our guests only the best. Please rest. Dinner will be in the grand dining hall soon. Clara waited for Victor to leave, then drank a whole glass of water in seconds. The cold water felt wonderful on her dry throat. She looked at the fruit and cookies and smiled. Then she washed her face in the bathroom sink. After a few minutes, she decided to explore the hotel. She left her room and walked back into the hall. The hallway was silent, with only the soft sound of the air conditioning. The lights were low, giving the space a peaceful feeling. The first door she passed was open, leading to a large library. Tall shelves were full of old books. A few people sat reading. Their faces looked serious, and the room smelled like old paper. Next, Clara found an indoor garden. Bright, exotic flowers grew under small, hidden lights. A koi pond sparkled in the center. An orange fish swam slowly under the water's surface. Clara paused to watch the fish, feeling calm. But soon, she noticed another corridor. This one was darker and quieter. At the end stood a single door. It looked old, made of dark wood with strange carvings. A brass plaque read, "Staff only." Clara was curious and walked closer. Suddenly, she heard soft whispers from behind the door. It sounded like many voices speaking quietly. Her hand moved toward the doorknob, but before she could turn it, a voice spoke behind her. "Excuse me, Miss Clara," said Victor calmly. "You should not be here." Clara jumped in surprise and turned around. Victor was watching her. "I am sorry," Clara said. "I was just exploring." Victor gave a polite smile, but his eyes looked sharp. "That is fine. But please join us in the dining hall. Dinner is ready. We do not want to start without you." Clara followed Victor to the dining hall. It was huge, with a long, shiny table that seemed to stretch forever. Guests in elegant clothes were already sitting and chatting. The smell of roast meat and spices filled the room. Clara sat near the center of the table. A waiter placed dishes in front of her, roast duck with sauce, fresh seafood on ice, and small cakes that looked too pretty to eat. She tasted a bit of everything, and it was all delicious. Yet something did not feel right. The guests around her spoke in quiet voices. Sometimes they gave her strange looks. Their eyes seemed distant, like they knew something she didn't. A man across the table smiled at Clara. "So, Miss Clara, how did you find our hotel?" "My car ran out of gas," Clara explained. "I guess I was lucky to see the sign." "Yes," said the man. "Very lucky indeed." After dinner, the guests moved to a large ballroom. An orchestra played sweet music. Many guests danced gracefully on the shiny floor. Their movements were smooth and almost hypnotic. Clara stood at the edge of the room, feeling out of place. She watched the dancers spin under the lights. Then she noticed something strange. Her eyes widened. Some dancers glided gracefully, yet their feet cast no shadows. She blinked again, hoping it was just a trick of the light. But no, the shadows were truly missing. A chill crawled up her spine. "What is going on here?" she whispered to herself. She slipped out of the ballroom. The music grew faint behind her as she walked down another hallway. Mirrors lined the walls. They were old and tall, reflecting the gentle light. But when Clara looked at her reflection, she felt uneasy. Something about it was wrong. She took a step forward, and the reflection did not move at the same time. It was a little slow. Then, to her horror, it smiled on its own. Clara's heart pounded. She rubbed her eyes, thinking she was seeing things. But the reflection kept grinning. Then it turned around inside the mirror and walked away. Clara stumbled back. She almost screamed. Suddenly, Victor appeared behind her. "Miss Clara," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were not kind. "You seem lost. Let me bring you back to your room. You need rest." Clara followed Victor back to room 202. Her mind was spinning with questions. She could not stop thinking about the missing shadows and the moving reflection. She tried to sleep, but her dreams were strange. She saw mirrors that whispered, halls that stretched into darkness, and dancers without shadows who reached out to her. When morning came, Clara woke up determined to find answers. She stepped out of bed and checked her phone. No signal. She left her room quietly and walked back to the hallway. She stopped at the staff-only door. This time, she wasn't scared. She wanted to know what was really happening. She placed her ear against the dark wooden door. The whispering was louder than before. It sounded like a steady chant. Slowly, she turned the doorknob. It was unlocked. She walked into a large, dim room. Strange objects filled the space. Old clocks, dusty books, and faded photographs. Long tables held rows of antiques. In the center stood a black mirror. Its surface was glossy but flickered like water. Clara looked into the mirror. Her reflection looked back. But it didn't move the same way she did. It seemed alive. Then it leaned closer. Its eyes looked cold and angry. "You should not be here," her reflection said. The voice was slow and twisted, sounding like Clara's own voice. Clara gasped and stepped back. Fear filled her throat. Before she could run, Victor appeared at the doorway. His perfect smile was gone. Instead, his face looked cold and angry. "You have discovered our secret," Victor said, walking closer. "This hotel is not normal. We help lost travelers. We give them comfort and luxury. But we also take something from them. Their shadows. Their reflections. Their souls." Clara's heart pounded. "My soul? You're joking." Victor's voice was calm but harsh. "No. The hotel needs energy to stay alive. It takes that energy from people who arrive here. That is why it appears in the desert where travelers are desperate. Many never leave." Clara's mouth went dry. She remembered the dancers without shadows, the strange guests, the reflection that spoke. She glanced at the black mirror and saw many faces inside. They were all moving and murmuring, looking trapped behind the glass. "I won't let you trap me," Clara said, stepping back. Victor sighed. "You have no choice. Now that you know our secret, the hotel will hold you forever. If you try to leave, you will become just another guest without a shadow." Clara felt wild panic rise inside her. She saw a big candlestick on a table nearby. In one quick motion, she grabbed it and threw it at the black mirror. The mirror cracked. A loud, terrible sound filled the room. It was like thousands of voices screaming. The glass began to shatter, piece by piece. "No!" Victor shouted, covering his ears. He stumbled as the mirror broke. Clara saw dark shapes rush out of the mirror like smoke. They zoomed around the room, then disappeared through the walls. Victor fell to his knees, looking exhausted. Clara used the moment to run. She dashed out of the room and down the hallway. The lights flickered madly. The hotel shook under her feet. The hallways twisted, and the doors seemed to move around her. She felt dizzy, but she kept running. She thought of the front entrance and kept going. At last, she reached the grand wooden doors of the lobby. She pulled them open, and bright desert light blinded her. She stumbled outside and felt hot sand under her shoes. Behind her, she heard the final echoes of the mirror breaking. She turned to look at the hotel. Her eyes took a moment to adjust. Then, in a blink, the entire building vanished. There was only empty desert behind her. Clara panted, leaning on her knees. Her clothes were dusty and wet with sweat. She could hardly believe she was free. She walked back to her car. Maybe the sudden burst of panic gave her new strength. Or maybe the hotel's magic was gone. She reached the car, pressed the start button, and miraculously, the engine began to run. It had gas again, even though it was empty before. She pulled away, driving across the sandy road. Her mind swirled with questions. Was it all real? Had she imagined everything? When she looked at the passenger seat, she saw a single cookie wrapped in a napkin. A small note lay beside it. It said, "Come back any time." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She was sure she would not return. She drove faster, eager to leave the desert. Yet in the back of her mind she wondered if Desert Haven Hotel would ever appear in front of some other lost traveler. Perhaps the sign would glow again in the hot sun, and someone else would fall into its spell. The miles of desert stretched on. The hot sun felt less threatening now. Clara kept driving until she saw a gas station on the horizon. She still felt shaken, but also relieved. She thought about telling someone her story. Would anyone believe her? Maybe they would laugh. Or maybe they would say it was a heat dream.